I'll record. Okay, so yeah, so all we're doing, so this is Ainsley Battles, Jim May, Transitional Story. So we're here with high school friend, Vanderbilt alum, Jim May. Jim, how are you? What are you up to? What are you doing?
I'm doing well. I live in Columbia, South Carolina. I'm a federal prosecutor, also known as an assistant United States attorney. I work for the Department of Justice, and day in, day out, I try to catch bad guys, generally white-collar criminals who have stolen money.
Interesting. So how did we arrive there from 995 Cole Drive in Lilburn, Georgia? That's Parkview's address, if you don't know.
It is. Well, unlike that very disappointing class of 1996, the class of 1998 did bring home the state championship. So while I was with Ainsley, and we saw it one slip through our fingers, my senior class, we were able to bring it home. And by winning the state championship, I then parlayed it and followed my friend in his footsteps to Vanderbilt University. At Vanderbilt University, I was a 4-year starter at left guard, which is by far the most unheralded position in sports. Nobody grows up saying I want to be a left guard, and for good reason. My last year, I actually graduated on time and was pursuing a master's degree, even though I thought I was going to play in the NFL. When those dreams came crashing down, I was able to use my education to finish my master's degree. I went to law school at South Carolina. I was a public defender for 5 years, and I've been a federal prosecutor for the last 8.5.
So when you think of the courtroom and you think of the football field, right? The first rule of all games is no games have rules. How did playing, especially being a left guard, being an offensive lineman, because you're one of those few positions, every play you're hitting, right? Wide receivers, we kind of jog through, you're hitting. Even in walkthroughs, you hit. What do you think is the most, what did you learn playing that helped you the most as you switched to going into law?
Well, I think that the thing that, again, I think was unique, at least for our high school, that preparation is the key to anything. Whenever you go into the courtroom, I generally try not to ask any questions that I don't know the answer to. And that doesn't happen by just, coming off the top of the head. It's through, great preparation. One thing that you learn is that, especially left guard, I think every play, technically I was holding. Because otherwise the gigantic super athlete across from me was going to beat me. However, you had to play within the framework which the referees allowed you to. And at this point, like in courtroom, there is a referee. He wears a black dress and he makes rulings based upon a rule book and case law, which can be interpreted and pushed various different directions. Much like it's not holding if your hands are inside the framework of the defensive lineman. Similarly, like there are a lot of questions that could be objected to be hearsay that may not be due to the way that the court allows you to interpret the rules. So there is a very much, it's a mirror in some ways because it's a competition. The law by nature is an adversarial process. There is not a play in football that's not adversarial. So it is, at least in that sense, there are a lot of things that you can draw on from the days of football, be it high school or college, that are mimicking in the courtroom.
What do you think the greatest lesson sports have taught you?
To admit when you're wrong. So I think that the hardest thing that a lot of people have throughout their entire life is to get up there and say, you know what, I messed up. My first start was against Mississippi State. At the time, they had a guy named Joe Lee Dunn was the defense coordinator. They were blitzing from everywhere. And the only thing that our offensive line coach told me going in is like, if you mess up, come over to the sidelines and tell me. I said, okay, why? He's like, because we can't adjust if I don't know. And at the end of the day, you do not tell me. I will find out later that night because the big eye in the sky don't lie. Of course, referencing the fact that every play is filmed from multiple angles. And you're going to be graded, and he's going to know exactly who messed up. So one of Ainsley's classmates, Jeff Barnett, was playing center. They ran what they called a cross bozo blitz. I picked up my guy. We came over to the sidelines, and Veal says, what happened? And Barnett goes, May missed him. I was like, I swear I think I got him, but I think I got him. And I held my breath until the next day at film to figure out that I actually did get my guy, but the other guy, the crossbozo guy, got through and hit Greg Zolman at the time.
Right. So playing, and now you're a husband, you're a father. So from a parent perspective, how is playing sports, or what do you think the best lesson sports has taught you in being a parent? And then, I'll take it back. Not being a parent, being a father.
I think it's about admitting when you're wrong, seeing people for who they are and what they have the ability to do, and trying to instill that into children, and also just toughness. I think that there's a lot that little boys, in particularly, just need toughness. And watching, them fall down and telling them, hey, you got to get tough, you got to get tough, you got to keep pushing, or hey, that you can't quit, is something that, is instilled at you at a young age playing sports. As sports, get more and more competitive, those lessons become more galvanized. But so those are the things that I think, at least with, two wild, feral monkey children that are just right now, I'm telling you, they're climbing a tree, that, when they fall, they got to be tough.
What's the difference between winning and success?
Oftentimes we measure success in just W's and L's. Well, that's not necessarily I think that I had a successful collegiate career without very many wins. However, would the record book look that way? I don't think so. So I think that it depends on how you define it and how you can continue to motivate yourself to get better. I think if you have put out your best product, regardless of the outcome, then you have been successsul. So if you put out your best product and you lose, then of course you're going to learn from that, and then you're going to get better. We can't control all aspects, even though we all want to. That's human nature, and especially being athletes. You think that if you raise your game, that everybody around you will raise theirs. Sometimes you just lose, like the 1995 state championship to Winston.
What is called the number 12, being able to count 12. So when you come to the sideline and you draw a form and there's 12 X's on the form, you can only have 11 in the game.
I understand that, but if we scored enough, that wouldn't matter. Or if Quincy never scored, it wouldn't matter either. Again, I think that was a successful season, even with that L.
It's easy to say that when you have a ring, right? Yes. Yeah, rings do that to folks. So let me ask you this. Why Vanderbilt? Because we were an anomaly, because we know the older we get, the more high schools we see, right, across the country. There's something about Parkview, there's something about Gwinnett County, Georgia. There's something there. We're recruited. You've got kids now from Gwinnett that go to Stanford, Oregon. We're all over the nation. I think they said there's 29 Gwinnett County athletes on NFL rosters right now, that's really just for Gwinnett, not Georgia. We have 29 Gwinnett athletes on rosters. So why a Vanderbilt as opposed to, let's say, a football factory? Because I don't want to, disparage any one conference or any one school, but Vanderbilt's known more academically in a major athletic conference. So it's somewhat of an anomaly.
So, much as your dad was a doctor when you were growing up, my dad's a professor. And so my dad played football at South Carolina. And his freshman year, he broke his neck. He never stepped foot on the field because after a broken neck in 1969, he was prohibited from playing. So when I was getting recruited and, I was getting the calls from Phil Fulmer or Steve Spurrier wanted me and Stinchcomb come down and talk to him, Dad got me aside and said, hey, where are you going to go? I said, I don't know. Phil Fulmer just called. He said, yeah, but he said, you could go there anyways. He said, you need to go to a school that you could not go to but for football. He says, what would you rather do? Would you rather get paid $50,000 a year or get paid $7,000? I said, what do you mean? He's like, go into, whatever state school. After you're in state, it's going to be $7,000 to $10,000 a year. said, Vanderbilt's 50. I said, well, I'd rather get paid $50,000 a year. He's like, yes. He said, as a result, he was like, I'm not going to sign the scholarship because you're 17 unless it's to Vanderbilt, Duke, Stanford, Northwestern, Notre Dame, Wake Forest. I said, but Dad, it's like, don't be a dumbass, son. I mean, like, go to a school that you could not have gone to but for football. Vanderbilt made sense. I knew a guy who couldn't win a state championship, but, had somehow found his way onto the playing field at Vanderbilt. So I figured that I had at least a chance that I could, sneak on the playing field at some point. But, at the end of the day, like, it worked out. I mean, it worked out great. I got 2 degrees, played a whole lot of football. I think that this may not be, fair, but like our friends who played at Georgia, they don't have near as many friends that they stay in contact with as I do. I think that is just because, that Vanderbilt is a unique situation. It's not a football factory. It's not where people are just going to, punch the ticket for 3 years and get out of there as fast as possible. It's a place where people are going for not only the experience of playing in the SEC, but also the life experience of getting truly a world-class education. The negative side of that right now is I'm a federal employee. I'm going to have to leave at some point because if my 2 sons do not, have, some athletic ability, then I'm likely going to have to pay for their college education at Vanderbilt because their mother went there as well. So I may have to be, on the back end paying, for that education that my dad talked about, now 22 years ago.
Right. But you bring up a great point, the fact that you had, with your dad as an example, he's played college football. He knows kind of what's behind the scenes. And that's really what the whole ethos of what Jockeypation is about, is just connecting dots. It's, I can't tell you what to do, but we firmly believe if you get the right information, just like if you're thinking of like with a jury, if we can just get the right information in the right order, you'll see the same thing we see. So with that being said, and you look at sports today, football, contact sports, do you let your kids play? Have you even had that discussion in the household?
Oh yeah. I mean, I think that anybody who has, played football and you at least start looking at the CTE and the, and the subconcussive hits and trying to figure out what the deal is. Have a really good friend who played soccer at Princeton. He has ALS, and he says that he believes that he was predisposed genetically, and that the subconcussive hits likely, were at least a factor in his developing ALS at 38 or 37. So it's really talking to, again, buddies who played in college and some who played in the NFL. The guys who played in the NFL, this is something that is, on their minds quite often. When I forget something, I'll start going back and saying, all right, can I name my recruiting class from the 1998 Vanderbilt recruiting class, just to make sure that my mind's sharp if I forget, something at the store. But to answer your question, I think that, if my children want to, if Wahoo and Gus would like to play football, I, of course, will encourage it. But it's not going to happen until they're playing 7th grade. I want to limit the amount of hits. And also make sure that whoever their coach is, has a culture where they are, doing the right thing. Again, like when we played football, I mean, the best hit in the world was, when a wide receiver is going over the middle and a safety just met him and hit him so hard their helmet popped off and the guy was on the ground just, twitching. Like that was the home run hit.
Right
now, which again is a little painful. I guess I don't want to say it's the right answer. I can see how we got here, but I mean, do you remember when Jimmy Williams got hit against LSU?
Yes. It's on YouTube. Actually, he was hit on the sideline.
It should be. I mean, like that was one of the hardest hits I've ever seen.
Well, I tell you what, in that game, it was my sophomore year. When we played, was that the game we broke Cecil's leg?
It was. That was the game I committed to.
Yeah. That was. So we were exchanging blows that game. We just
7.
Well, yeah, and that's a play clock. So that's its
own.
Yeah, we're trying to keep it positive, man. We're trying to keep it upbeat, buddy. Good old anchor, huh? Anchoring down.
Like, that's the worst. Like, I want to talk to whoever came up with that. That's what you do to weather the storm. You don't anchor down in a battle. You go ahead. Damn the torpedoes, to quote Farragut. Right? Full steam ahead. Anchor down. I mean, it's like we're saying we're going to lose.
Well,
It's a stinker.
I can see your point of view. I guess culturally speaking, in the African American community, there was a music group called the Commodores. So
Of course.
yes, Foreman and Jerry Curls is not intimidating by any stretch of your imagination. Being led by Lionel Richie, that's not you don't rob a bank with Lionel Richie.
Easy like Sunday morning.
Yeah,
Easy like Sunday morning.
right. That's yes, yes. You people will
I mean,
lie to you.
that should be what we run out of the tunnel to. We're easy.
Yeah,
Easy like Sunday.
yeah. Hey, let me ask you this: when we're thinking about leaders and leadership, because I think like with football, because like my kids, right? You see a lot of personality, and that's not something I don't know where it comes from. You know, they come out cute, and then later on you start arguing with them, right? Uh, but from a leadership standpoint, are leaders made or are leaders born?
Yes. Both. I mean, there are certain individuals who do not have the ability to lead. And in fact, the vast majority of the world, I don't think, has the true ability to mobilize a crossover of people. And I think that's the reason why you have a lot of companies that don't do well. Understanding, like, the first thing the leader has to do is have sacrifice. I think that whatever one's political perspective is, a lot of people who see politics or politicians fail is because a lot of politicians want everybody to sacrifice for themselves. But a true leader gives to their team, their unit, whatever group they have. Like, they have to show that they are willing to go to the mat for their folks, and like that's the only way that you will have the buy-in of anybody else. I think that there has to be a unique personality trait. I don't know what it is. I think one of it is being tough. That for a person to be a leader. I think there's some people that no matter how many God-given talents they have, that because who they are, like, they need somebody to be the captain of the ship. Whenever we have big cases, I have a big case right now that we're trying to start mobilizing to trial, and like one of the first things we say is like, all right, there's one captain on the ship. Like, if you don't like that, then like, hey, you don't need to be a part of this team. But if that's the case, you will see, like, I'm the captain, or if someone else is the captain, that they are going to sacrifice for this unit, and then we expect, or the leader expects everybody on the team to do the same. So to answer your question and not answering your question, yes, I think they're both made, and they're both made and born. However, I think the situation oftentimes dictates which one is which at any given time.
Yeah, and I think you really bring up a great distinction insofar as the generations that are in an office. So when I was working, they were saying, like, with school, with teachers, or even when I was doing fundraising, they said you have 5 generations of people that work in an office, from baby boomers all the way down to millennials. So when you're talking about leadership and just the nature of leadership, we think of like our dad's times, it was shut up because I told you to. You don't ask questions, men don't cry. And then men are supposed to have feelings. Men are supposed to take time for themselves. And so it's kind of the what it means to be a man and a woman. And so as you go through time, and we're kind of situated in an interesting place because we know what life was like without the internet, but we also know what life was like with us. You've got some that still can't program a VCR. And in the words of my daughter, there was this ringing sound. She's like, "What is that sound?" I said, "That's a telephone." She's like, "Oh, she's never heard a telephone ring because it's all cell phones."
So again, you just dated yourself.
Without a doubt.
A VCR. Like, who actually has a VCR? And who programs a VCR nowadays?
So
I
I
mean,
do.
again, I mean,
My game tapes are on VHS. What do you want me to do?
all mine are in DVD. Again,
What's a
that different
DVD?
exactly. That like so like I think the interesting thing is, you know, there is a very real difference in the generations. Um, but the one thing that if you've played sports, like especially if you played sports, you know, at least on the collegiate level, because you have people from all over the country, sometimes outside the country, come together for a common goal. It doesn't matter what they look like, who their dad was, who their mom was, what experiences they bring into that, locker room, that huddle. It doesn't matter. Like you're going forward for a common purpose. If it's to stop the offense, or if it's to score points, or if you're one of the unfortunate souls who's trying to kick it to the uprights, you're coming together for one reason. And I think that is the one thing that translates more from sports that can make former athletes successful in any occupation they go into. Knowing that, like, hey, if there's a common purpose, it doesn't matter who the person is, what experiences they have. The only thing is, can we do that common purpose? Which is, again, unfortunately, I think that you see, not everybody can do that.
Right, right. So let me ask you this. If we had a time machine,
Yes.
go back in time, you get
Yes.
10 minutes, right? You get to go back to the Thursday night before your first Friday night football game, your senior year in high school. So think of like A Christmas Carol, right? Going back. You can sit at the end of your bed for 10 minutes with yourself right now to all the way back when you were 17. What do you tell yourself?
Enjoy it. Just enjoy it. I mean, it's a game. Like, yeah, try your best. And like, other than that, I wouldn't say anything else, because that was my dad. My first game I traveled to was out at Alabama, right? And Dad just like, hey, enjoy it. You don't know how many times you're gonna do this, right? And then when I got my first start as a redshirt freshman, he said, enjoy it. So I think that I would just echo the words my dad said. I wish I enjoyed my senior year in college more as far as playing, even though we had a change of coaching staff. I think that I would have enjoyed it more. I did think I was going to play again. I didn't. So the last game I had was against Tennessee, and and it just left kind of a bad taste in the mouth, because we did not play very well that game. Our quarterback was hurt. Our starting running back was hurt. Our starting fullback was hurt. And I mean, it looked like you could not put together a more mixed match backfield than we had at that game. But I wish I'd enjoyed it more. So,
yeah. Learn how to be present as I start to meditate more. Because man, I'm telling you, just this whole circle of life and how we got to where we are, man. It's you kind of sit down and look around and just we're turning into our parents. I start to realize how much of a person they are. I'm one of 3 kids, and I've got 2 in my house, and I think of all the nonsense, the little stupid things that were big to me, but now that I'm a parent, I'm like, are you joking? Do you understand what I have to do day in and day out for you? And you're worried about, crayons or you didn't, what was it? Recording the little shows. You didn't record the new episode. And you're like, this is what it's come to.
yep.
But then you say, man, I don't know. Because what kind of world are our kids going to grow up? What kind of world are they going to grow into? They said 40% of the jobs, they don't even exist. Social media, that didn't even exist when we were in school. There was no such thing.
I can that my folks never pushed me to anything. I'm going to push my kids to at least have an engineering background in college. Like an engineer, you can do anything. Like something that I'm sure I would have hated, and I'm sure they will hate me for it, but at least it opens the doors that they can do, a whole host of things, be it go on professional schools or actually just go and get a job. Engineers will always be around.
It's interesting you say I'm pushing my kids to finance and numbers because enterprise, commerce will always be around no matter what you call the place. Somebody's got something to sell. Man.
Right.
So if you had to give some advice to
Okay.
a college player that can see this is probably the end, or the pro player that's bounced around, the journeyman, or you're kind of at that point where you just don't really want to go to practice anymore, right? What
Okay.
kind of advice would you give to those people that are standing at that crossroads between the devil I know, I don't like it, but at least I have comfort and predictability in that,
Okay.
versus let's just go down the road less traveled, and whatever this itch is inside, I need to scratch it.
So I think that the hard thing that I see on a day in and day out basis in, my practice of law, and also with my buddies who are doing various, types of business, is that, a lot of people do not enjoy their job, right? A lot of people do not, actually enjoy going to work every day. Luckily enough, like I love my job. I mean, I thoroughly find it interesting. I find it rewarding. At some point, I will leave the government to go try to make money because, again, if my kids follow after my wife and her athletic ability, then I'm gonna have to pay for Vanderbilt. But trying to figure out what is something that you could enjoy doing, like, and it doesn't have to be, however you enjoy it is great. Like if it is being a high school football coach, great. If it is, trying to learn how to be a world-class chef, go into culinary school. Right. If it is, trying to, some people enjoy starting businesses. They have that entrepreneurial bug, which is something that I truly cannot and do not understand. Like that is something that would be maddening to me. But I have friends who have started like a lot of different businesses. A lot of them fail, but some of them don't. I mean, it is the consummate, like, I'm going to keep getting up until, I'm never going to stay down. I'm going to keep getting up, and sooner or later something's going to work. So I guess the thing is, like, actually take some time to go talk to people that you respect and know who enjoy their business, and figure out, how they got there, and figure out, is that something that, you would want to do? And then, start figuring out and planning how you can get to that, that type of occupation. Again, luckily, I mean, I fell into being an attorney. I had no idea what I wanted to be. My feelings were hurt that I wasn't playing football. And I took a test, and I did really well on the test, the LSAT. And then I, got into law school. I'm the first attorney I've ever met, right? I didn't grow up around attorneys. I thought I wanted, I didn't know what I wanted to be. So this is not, the path I took. I got lucky. I could also have been the guy who, bounces around doing odd jobs for the first 20 years out of undergrad, and then been sitting there going like, all right, what am I going to do when I grow up? Because I don't know about you, I still feel like I'm 22, mm-hmm. Right? I still feel like, nothing's really changed. And then I look and I have gray hair. And it's like, huh.
Right. Yeah. And I think that's part of the blessing of being an athlete. We had that. How old were you when you started playing football?
12.
Okay, so I was 9. So when you think of, I'm 41 now. So for the better part of my life, sports was always a consistent. No matter where we moved, football's football. It's 12 minutes a quarter or whatever it was back in high school or in Pop Warner. But you always had practice. You could always set your calendar by it. And I think that's why when we get older, that child in us that gets beat out of us, a lot of people get beat out of them with just work. We kind of kept that little Peter Pan. We kept that little kid alive. And I think that's something that I definitely know with my kids. It gives me a chance to like play with them, to be able to kind of detach for a while.
Mm-hmm. So something that you just mentioned, I think is kind of interesting. And I think you see it a lot with, today with people, who have the inability to disagree with somebody else, right? Think of whatever topic there is. Like if you lean to the right, you watch Fox News and you have, one bit of, soundbite. If you lean to the left, it's MSNBC or CNN, and you have one bit of soundbite. But the people have very little ability to discuss, should they fill RBG's seat? Like, here's the one thing that I know that you and I have done. We have, strapped on a helmet and tried to hit each other so hard we knock each other out, maybe even come to blows after the play. And then, when you take off your helmet, you go back into the locker room, you're all on the same team, right? To understand that you can, be, adversarial with somebody, yet not hate them, yet not have, ad hominem personal attacks, is something that I'm not sure that people who did not play, a violent game, like, really understand. And I see that also in the practice of law, right? So one thing I can do is I can go out and be as aggressive person as possible in the courtroom because I'm defending my client. On the same hand, as soon as we're out of the court, I then try to have a conversation with my adversary, talk about their kids, talk about whatever, talk about what I'm cooking over the weekend. And they do not have the ability to go from, well, wait a second, you just came after my guy. Yeah, because that's our job. Like now we're just normal people walking to our truck or our car, right? And like, it's interesting that most people do not have the ability to say, hey, that's the ball game that you play. But as soon as it's over, you're back to the normal person. You're back to the guy in the locker room, which is something really interesting. I think that the more people only go to, echo chambers to get their understanding of the world, because of the internet, I think the harder it is, it's harder and harder to have people who can say, wait a second, I disagree with it, right? I disagree with your position, and actually have a,
because are you familiar with Plato's cave allegory?
Mm-hmm.
So locked up in the cave.
I'm sorry, you broke up a whole lot.
Oh, okay, hold on. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me? Hello? Oh, he's frozen. Oh, they're back.
All right.
Are you moving? Okay, yeah, you were frozen. You were like.
So were you.
Okay.
So I missed whatever you were talking about.
Okay, can you hear me? Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now.
Plato's cave allegory.
Yes.
That's kind of how I see things, because I spent 8 years as a public school teacher. So when you go through the American school system, you have a certain framework you work from because we put it there.
Mm-hmm.
You take the fallacies of logic, from straw men to, I think there's like 41 fallacies, right? When you start seeing the tricks being played, that's where it becomes maddening. Because we have a great family friend that since we lived out here in Vegas, right? I mean, they are the most Trump supporting Trumps, right? But we start to realize there's certain pieces of information they don't know. So you start realizing it's lies through omission. I tell you all of this, like, hey, why don't you just work hard? But on the other side, you don't explain, for the last 400 years, there's been a systematic attempt to make sure people's behavior is controlled. So you're telling people half a story. So they know enough to be right, but don't know enough that they're wrong. And that's where I think there's the breakdown. What can people do? It's like people get so convinced that they're right. What kind of questions can they ask themselves to start realizing they're not as right as they think they are?
So I think that one thing that people aren't doing anymore is sitting down and talking. So one of the books, I think the most powerful book I read in college was a book by a guy named Robert Putnam. It's called Bowling Alone. It was talking about this, looking at, over the last 50 years, I think it was written in 1999, that from, the 1950 to 1999, that social interactions were dropping precipitously over that time. People weren't going to bowling leagues anymore. People weren't going to the Elks or the Shriners or, the Masonic lodges. That people are starting to, withdraw. And as a result, like, you don't have the social capital, you don't have the ability to have, a meaningful, interaction. And then if you look at the last 20 years, so that book was written in 1999, people now are just going on their phones, right? People are more worried about a like or a thumbs up on Facebook than they are about, why don't we go and meet up and have a drink at the bar? I think that the thing that matters the most is getting around people and, actually being able to have a conversation. One of my good friends, he was actually a year in front of you at Vanderbilt, named Jay Richardson. He just became a federal judge for the Fourth Circuit, so one away from the Supreme Court. And he has a family member who has spent the last 40 years working between the Palestinians and the Israelis, trying to figure out how can they get, better relationship. And she says the number one thing that has to happen is that people just have to sit down and talk with each other in person. It's like, once you do that, you realize that, the vast majority of the world is all about the same thing, right? They're all about, you want your kids to be successful. You want other people around you to be successful. You want everybody to get along. You don't want sickness. You don't want, heartache. You want to be successful. You want to feel safe. Like, that's what life is all about, right? Raising your kids. I also think it's about, having a good drink and eating something good in the process. But then I digress. I was a left guard. But like, trying to get people together and, understand that, we're all the same and we all have the hopes and dreams. And like, how can we try to figure out like a path forward that, where everybody has this ability to be successful? I agree with you. I think that, that oftentimes people put, it's, of course, it's human nature. I want my family to be successful, as opposed to saying like, hey, if we're all successful, then everything is better. Like, we can't make, John Smith do the right thing, but what we can do is we can put together a system where if people work hard and, help each other and like say, hey, this is something that you're not doing great. Let me help you get better at that. I think that we're all trying to do this right thing. However, again, I'll go back to my common soapbox. That doesn't sell advertising space on Fox News. That doesn't sell advertising space on CNN. Like, that's the reason why, adults have to come up above, talking heads who are only truly trying to ensure that the next 30-minute news cycle is, has whatever the most recent horribleness, to have a cavalcade of horribleness to parades, that way that whatever the advertiser continues to pay money for spots. I don't want to sound, like that we're going towards a dystopia, but unfortunately, I don't think that until people put down, their little 6-inch screens and look up and, I guess we can't shake hands anymore and we can't hug anymore, but, sooner or later that will be, hopefully we can go back to being, people again.
Yeah, and that's part of the reason why I started Joccupation. I think we're at a point now in the nexus of human history where athletes are their own demographic. There's enough generations of them throughout sports. When you think of like Fred Taylor, we played against him in college. His son plays in the NFL or played in the NFL. Barry Sanders' son played in the NFL. Jerry Rice's son. Clay Matthews, his dad, was a Tennessee Titan. Clay Matthews. So when we think of not only just the generations within sports, then we think of what is everybody doing? it blew me away to realize Fortune 50 CEOs, Kofi Annan, who was the head of the UN, everybody has a sports background. Everybody that's at an elite level in the business world, if you go back, somewhere they were playing competitive sports. And that's where the light bulb goes off and says, there's something there. Regardless of your ability, there's something there that you're being instilled with that's helping you achieve. But now it's moving from the achievement to now, I think as athletes, we can go into a bar. You can go into a bar in Abu Dhabi, walk up, sit down, and be able to hold a conversation with somebody. They don't feel attacked. They don't feel threatened. You're just like, hey, can I get you a beer? How are you? Because you see the humanity. And I think that's through the fire. That's through two-a-days and throwing up and looking over and realizing, if I don't have him, I can't do this.
So are you telling me that this, though, then falls apart because, as we both know, no longer do they do two-a-days?
Yeah, that's true. But as long as
children are infirm, or that they, do not have the necessary, life lessons.
Right. They haven't been sufficiently beaten enough. I don't want to quite say that, because when we played
Back in the day.
Yeah, when we had the number one defense in the SEC, we averaged, it was something like 90 plays a game. The majority of other teams were averaging about 60 plays a game. In today's football, they're running 110 plays with this RPO and all this, the basketball on grass that they're like the Tim Couch, the air raid and the run and shoot that Spurrier was doing. When Urban Meyer took it over and started with Tim Tebow and going, dude, this is a track meet now. So
Chuck Losey, now with James Franklin up at Penn State, said when Franklin and Chuck were at Vanderbilt, they went down and played A&M when Manziel was there. He said he's never seen anything like it. How fast, the pace at which they ran plays. It's like there's nothing that compares to that.
Right. Yeah, I mean, they wear you absolutely down. I mean, mentally, physically. And so to have to train for it, yeah. Hey, so in closing, I noticed you guys had some bugs this weekend to eat that you grilled them, right?
I boiled them.
Okay.
We got a dozen lobsters, boiled them for 12 minutes, and then had a big time.
Okay.
My 5-year-old ate 3 of them, which is terrifying.
Well, left
guard there, left guard.
Yeah, either a guard or a D tackle.
Yeah, nose guard, not even D tackle, just a lump.
Yeah, just fill up 2 gaps, man. But Jim, I so appreciate, one, it's good catching up with you, man. It's good to see you personally, man. It's good catching up because we, with life and the way stuff happens. So thanks so much for your time.
Absolutely.
Anything else that you want to share, say?
I can pontificate, but I think we hit it. I think we hit around enough stuff.
Yes, I concur, young man. So, man, hey, have a great weekend. Thanks so much again. Give your wife and kids my best. If your mom's still there, give her a hug for me.
I will. Are we going to win a game?
Say one more time.
Are we going to win a game this year?
Yes. I just don't know which one. No.
Neither South.
Okay. To me, Ole Miss is always in play. A&M,
Sure.
I'm Florida. The ball can bounce. Hey, man.
Again.
They got to go to college. Gainesville. So Georgia, Florida, Tennessee. You're gonna get some arrests. Hold on. I'm gonna stop filming for a second.